Hey, how's it going, everybody? Jeremy Donson here with thedrumprofessor.com. Today we're going to be doing Counting Stars by OneRepublic, and we're going to start right before the chorus at 1 minute and 13 seconds. So 1 minute, 13 seconds, just before the chorus starts cranking up here. Now, this beat has a very, what's called driving bass beat. So your bass just boom, 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 pretty much mostly the whole song. Now, the hi-hats that he does here, it's easy to maybe misunderstand what he's doing because it changes 3 times in the song: quarter note, eighth note, and then 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So it's the way they mixed it. It's not the easiest thing in the world just to listen to that and hear it, but if you listen really closely, you can hear the difference between the quarter note and then the 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a pattern that's in this chorus here. It really just builds up, and that helps the build up in changing the hi-hat pattern. So we're going to start at 113 and go from there. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, comment below, email me directly, and that's why I'm here to help out. So feel free to ask any questions you may have. Here we go, 113.
Everything that kills me makes me feel alive.
All right, so in the beginning of this section on the chorus, we're going to do a quarter note hi-hat pattern. It's going to sound like this. Now, with that shown, first let's just go over the basic beat. So the basic beat is your bass hits every time. It hits without the snare, it hits with the snare, both together. So you're going to crash with the bass, and then hit the snare and the hi-hat together and the bass drum. So all three. So bass, all three, bass, all three. That's your basic pattern. Now there's 2 ways to do this fill. One is how I just did it. And that last snare should line up perfectly with the bass drum. So it should go snare both, snare both. So bass, snare, both, right? Second way is keep your hi-hat going and then just hit twice with your left hand. Bass, snare, both. And you're doing hi-hat with that. Really, it's personal preference there. Either way is okay to do that. Just showing you both options. Which one you want to do is entirely up to you. I would recommend, if you can, if that's comfortable with you to do this, I would probably recommend you do that, because then your hi-hats just stays the same. It's not broken or anything. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. So either way is good. All right, so putting that at speed now. Now this next part, you should definitely do the hi-hat during that fill. So that part's going to go like this. So to start with, you go bass, both, bass, snare, both, right? Bass, both, bass, snare, both. So let's break that down a little bit. So just like in the normal beat, bass and hi-hat, and then all three. So, and then bass and hi-hat one more time. And then you have snare by itself. Now once you do that snare by itself, you do all three again. Once you do all three, then you do this fill. And a one. Now, you're going to be very tempted at first unless you're very familiar with independent skills. In other words, independent skills means like hitting a snare by itself in the middle of a beat, or a bass by itself in the middle of a beat. But if you're comfortable with that, awesome. If not, you're going to be very tempted to do this. You're going to want to hit the hi-hat with that snare. Just again, just if you go away from the hi-hat when your snare starts to come down, then you'll be less tempted to hit the hi-hat with it, right? I mean, if it's just chilling up here, all you got to do is react and you're going to hit with it. But if you raise it away from the hi-hat when it's hitting, then it's more difficult for you to do it incorrectly and hit the hi-hat with the snare. So putting it together again. Okay. All right, so there we have that. Now, once we get to that point, we now go to the 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a section on the hi-hat cymbal. So now, instead of, well, let's go over the fill in just a sec. Let's work on this beat real quick. So the core of the beat is this. So you're crashing with the bass. The bass doesn't change. It's just a driving bass still. So crash and snare, and the snare is with bass, right? Because the bass and snare hit together in this pattern. So crash and snare. Okay. So think of it this way. You're going back and forth from high snare with bass to high bass with no snare there. So the snare hits every other time, the bass hits every time. Now, speeding that up. You're going to do 2 snares for that fill there when you get to that point. So think of it like this. Instead of going, you're going to do, so basically instead of going right, left, right, all on the hi-hat, you're going to go right, left, right, but the left, right is on the snare drum, right? Think of it that way. So instead, and there's your fill. Okay, so now, how to go back into the beat after the fill, and that starts it back up again. Now, the second snare drum that you hit is going to be with the bass drum at the same time, so just make sure that they're hitting exactly at the same time. You don't want it to be like, or right, and that's easy to do that at first. Just practice that until it's together, and then you got it. Okay, so moving on. So we got this. Now, on the second fill during the 1 and a 2 and a hi-hat section, you're going to do so you're going to do all 3 and then dig a crash or and a 1. Okay, so now let's put it together, starting on the dut, digga, dut, digga, dut, digga, dut, digga pattern on the hi-hat. Now this next fill is by the way, let's go back and review real quick. So you do that fill, and then you do the that fill next, and then you repeat it again. You do this fill again, and then next you do the same fill we did with the quarter note pattern. So you do the Now there's several ways you can do this with the hi-hat. You can leave it out completely, and that's fine if you do that. You can do this. You can do it. Really, that's not super important. You can have no hi-hat in there. You can have a hi-hat in there. You can do it however you feel comfortable with. I would recommend, just for keeping it simple, just leave the hi-hat out completely. So it's going to go. And then we do the same thing we did before, and that's the end of the chorus. It actually goes to the outro, which you could also consider the chorus if you wanted, and then it goes back to the verse again. So putting it together with music again, just to refresh, sounds like this.
Everything that kills me makes me feel alive.
All right, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, if you have any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to comment below or email me directly, jeremy@thedrumprofessor.com, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, guys. Be sure to have fun, stay awesome, and rock on. Later, everybody.